everyone, and welcome back to our series of Learning to Code with P5. Today in this video, we will be talking about functions which return some kind of values, but these are not the pre-built functions. We are talking about customizing our own functions and creating them in a way that they return some kind of value to us that can be used when we call them in our draw function. So let's get started. All right, so first things first, make sure that you've already remixed your project, your blank sketch, and before you start working on this example. In this one, I'll be taking you through a couple of examples. Why? Because when we talk about returning any kind of values, there are different kind of values that can be returned, something that we've played with before. So think about it. When we have worked with random functions, it is generating random kind of number for us to work with, right? We have also used distance functions, map functions, and so on and so forth. But sometimes we've also put some sort of conditional statements where it is still returning us a value. The difference is that the value returned to us is either a true or a false, 1 or a 0 that we can kind of work with, right? So in this example, I'll take you through the first one where it will return us a calculated value, and then the second one where it will return us a Boolean value. So I'll dive right into our examples. So let's just do turn example 1, which is calculated value. And then we will have a second one where it will do a Boolean value. Okay. So for the first one, we can dive right into creating and writing our own custom function with a parameter. Just because it's a very simple example, I just want you to go through it quickly. So for instance, okay, let's see, we are here trying to do a calculated value, right? So when I say a calculated value, what does it mean? So we will try to put in a mathematical formula, simple enough, and I'm not getting into very deep formulas or anything. We'll just do an addition, right? So we will create our own custom function where if the parameters, whatever the numbers that we put in the parameters, will just get added and it will output us that number. So keeping it super simple, let's just call our function numbers. And here, let's say we will set two parameters, value 1 and value 2, something super simple. Again, remember here in the parameters, we have now declared the variables that we will use inside our function. And for our functions to be calculated, let's just put them in another variable called total. So let total be value 1 plus value 2, as simple as that, right? This is something that we can kind of understand. And then we will use literally this thing called return, and then whatever we want to be returned is going to go right after this. So since it's a variable that I want to return, I'm saying total, but what total is doing is that total basically means that these variables are going to be added, right? So now that we've created our function, let's see how we can use them in our draw function. So one easy way for us to do that, and I'm going to start off with something, is that I can, okay, before I do that in print, maybe we can see that, right? The way we kind of call our functions is this, right? So let's say if I put 3 and 5, so, but there is no way for us to see. So I'm going to use this entire function inside the print one, and it should kind of output that number for us. So maybe we can go back to our console. I'm gonna comment this out for now. So now you can see that this is generating basically the total of the numbers that I've assigned. Again, because it's not a very dynamic value, because it's not changing over a period of time. Let's say, for instance, in case of a random function, it is randomly generating numbers with each frame, or in a distance function where it keeps on calculating and recalculating the distance, right? So this is why we are seeing the number of frames which are going super fast, and this one is being reprinted, but we can see this value as being constant. So that's one way to go about it. Second way, what we can do is we can literally use this to calculate something for us. So let's say if I do let w And now, just like our random function, I've put this function inside, but I need to use this W somewhere. So let's just create a rectangle and do a simple one. Let's say mouse X, mouse Y. And now here I will use it as a width, and then do a frame count into 0.01. And then what it should do is it should actually be creating a rectangle for us. So let me just do this, because it will just keep on. So now if you see, first of all, it is super slow. So let me make it 0.1, and this is also super small. Maybe let's just make it a bit big. So now you can see this is the first one. And then over a period of time, as our frame keeps on increasing, frame number keeps on increasing, we can see that value is being used for in the Y position, whereas our static value, which was defined initially in the width, is sort of constant, right? So you can see that you can actually use those numbers. So that's one way to sort of go about it. This way it has been generating us some kind of number, and we were able to use it. So that is sort of simple enough. So I'm going to comment this out for now, just so that we know that this is an example that we have used. Also, by the way, before I kind of forget, this thing, and let's say calling here print W, these are both the same things, right? Because here I just put it in a variable format instead of putting the whole thing inside. These both are the same thing. So just wanted to let you know that this is same as print whatever. Okay, so now that we have learned how to calculate numbers and then return them so that we can use them in our own way, however we want them, we can now look into something different, which is going to be using a Boolean value. Okay, so how are we going to do that? For our Boolean value, think about it, because it's doing either a true or false. That means that we have to construct something which is in a conditional format. So in order for us to do that, we need to have some kind of thing existing already so that we can add on our conditional statement and make it work and see how this kind of can work for us. So let's go back to something that we have used a lot and something that we are kind of familiar with. So we will try to create a bunch of circles all around on the canvas, and then we will try to change the color of different circle based on if the position of our mouse is over that circle. Okay, so that's what we will try to do. So we know how to create a bunch of circles. So let's go with this one. We know how to create empty arrays. And here, so we have 3 of these things that we will be working with, and then we need to initialize them. So we are going to use our loop function. Well, loop as in our for loop, basically. And we will say, okay, let I is 0, initializing our index number. I is less than num. I plus plus, we are doing it in incremental. Here I'm going to also add our num value. So let's just start with 100 circles first. And then we have to initiate our values for each of these arrays, X, Y, and diameter. So let's just do a random one here. Again, we will want it to be spread out on the entire canvas. So let's just make our lives easier and do it for. And then the last thing is we want to do it for our diameter. So let's just give it certain kind of value from 20 all the way to, I don't know, 60. Okay, so now that we have initialized these sort of arrays, we can kind of go to our draw function. Okay, so here we are starting off with our second example. Okay, so we need to, of course, use again our for loop for it to work. I is 0, I is less than none, I plus plus, okay. And here what we will do is we are going to create our circle, and we will use the arrays that we have just created. Okay, so once we are done with this, we have all the different kind of circles spread out. Maybe we can do stroke gray, minor difference, but just making it light. Okay, so not important, but just there. All right, so now that we've created and spread out all the different kind of circles, let's try to go to our conditional statement here. So what are we trying to do here is that if, let's say, my mouse is over a circle, that circle should change color, right? So that way what we are doing is we are calculating the distance between the center of the circle. How can we kind of do that, right? So we are trying to calculate the distance between the center of the circle and the mouse, right? That's one thing, but then we need to understand that if that distance is less than the radius, which means radius is what? Half of this diameter of the circle, right? So that will tell us that if it is basically less than the radius of the circle, it is inside that circle. And that way it will be able to follow the whatever instructions that we have said set out for it to do. So in order for us to do that, first of all, we need to do a distance thing. So let this be distance calculated, right? And the way we will do that is I'm going to use this in here. So now that we have a distance, we can use our conditional statement, right? So what we can say is, okay, if our distance is less than the radius, and the radius is half of the diameter, right? Right, again, because we are talking about all the different circles. So if the distance is less than half of the diameter, which is basically the radius, we will say, okay, fill a certain color, right? Else fill something else. So okay, so I mean, technically, if you don't put it in else, it would go back to its default thing, but we are just putting it out here. So let's keep it white is our else statement, and then here we can say, I don't know, light blue. So now you can see it has already started working. Of course, there are some multiple circles which are kind of behaving because they're overlapping. So that way they are getting, you know, having some overlap of their radius as well. But basically we are able to kind of change the color of the circles based on where our cursor is. So that's one thing. Now that we've done this, maybe a good way to optimize it for us and generate a different kind of value so that we can use this function over a period of time is maybe we create our own function and call it mouse is over. You know how we have all mouses pressed and everything, but this is something that doesn't exist in the P5 library, so we can name it like that, or you could literally name it something else, and we can set the parameters inside. So if we are using this function in here, we need to move a few things. First of all, that means that we need to calculate the distance in some way that needs to go inside the function for it to perform, right? So we will say, okay, let the distance be this, right? And then we are using some of this function here, but we will actually change it. So we will just see how that kind of works. First of all, this function is specific to each circle, so we are not going to be using arrays. So I'm going to remove this for all of them, including this, right? So that way it is confined to a specific circle that we are talking about. And secondly, we are going to put in some kind of parameters inside. So again, you know, the X and Y position become the parameters of this one, and including the diameter. Again, at this point in time, here they're being declared. They will be used when we call them in our draw function, and then whatever the values are going to be assigned here. So that's one thing. But here it is doing some kind of calculation for us as well, right? Based on whatever the values we assign it. Okay, so here what we have to do is we don't want this condition to have these kind of set of instructions, right? Because we want only for it to tell us if it is working or not working, because our conditional statements, we can put these kind of conditions or set of instructions in our draw function. If the color needs to be light blue, or if it needs to be opaque or whatever, right? Those are the things that we will put and customize in our draw function. So here what we want is basically you calculate the distance for us, right? Between the center of the circle to the X and Y position of my mouse. And then if that distance is less than the radius of that circle, you return the value as either true or false. So that's what we need. So we are going to literally say here, return true, right? So if the distance is less than diameter, return true, else you're going to return false. So that is what it will be doing for us, okay? So that, you know, once if it proves to be either yes or no, or a true or false, our condition is going to be met based on whatever instructions we write here. So in this case, now what I need to do here is, of course, I don't need to calculate this, right? All I need to know is that, again, not even this, right? Because that is already being calculated here in our function. So what I need to know is that if this function mouses over is whatever the parameters I need to set here, and if that happens to be true, then it will do something. So let's just put it in another variable. You can literally write it inside, but I'll just, for the sake of clarity, I'm doing it. Let check is mouse is over. So that's our function. And I am assigning the values, right? So I need to put these three parameters here. And since we are working with variables here, I'm going to use it and put them here. And now I can say if check. That way, literally, it is, if check means literally it is comparing it to be true or not. So I can say like this. Okay, I can say like this. If check is true, right? Remember double equal sign, because it is doing a comparison. I can say that and it should work. Or if I remove this and I just say if check, you know, it will still do the work for us. So now that what I'm saying is, okay, use this function, right? And I'm setting the parameters inside here. And if that turns to be true, then you're going to fill light blue, else you're going to fill white. Now what happens is that we can give as many conditions as we want. We can use and reuse it. That's the whole point of creating functions with parameters, and now with returning values as well, that we can use it to our advantage when we need it and wherever we need it. So we can literally kind of work around with that. So I'm going to format this. So here are a couple of examples for you to sort of work with, either if you want to have a calculated value returned back to you so that you can use it in the draw function, or if you want some kind of a Boolean value to be returned, you can create your own functions and totally customize them. So I'll see you in the next video.